Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing Elsbeth Season 2, Episode 13. So before I get into the review, I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to my channel, likes my videos, leaves me comments. I appreciate you so much. If you have any comments or questions about this episode, definitely leave them below. So this episode starts out where you see an older gentleman and he's with a very young woman. They're kind of eating at a restaurant. And he looks really happy. I mean, obviously this woman is half his age, if not more. And, he just seems real happy and she's feeding him and she seems to genuinely care about him. And then you see them leave the restaurant. Well, should I say before they leave the restaurant, you see her put some kind of pill. She has takes the pill capsule out and empties it into his drink. And then he drinks it. And then they leave. Before they leave, she asks to get 2 steak dinner orders to go. And she says it's for the dog. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So then you see them go up to his apartment, which I guess is in the same building, and obviously we find out later this man's like a billionaire. He owns the building, but in his old age, he's kind of become a recluse. So you see her take him back to his apartment. She takes one of the bags and throws it down the trash chute, and then they go into the apartment. And then when she leaves later, she throws the other one down. So obviously you're like, okay, this is some kind of distraction. Why? We don't know. Is it for the noise? And also before she leaves the balcony door open. So, and you kind of hear it hit. So I'm like, okay, I think this is setting up an alibi, right? The noise from leaving the door open with the wind, maybe the trash chute, who knows? And you see, she's helping him get dressed in his pajamas and she's tucking him in. And, he says, this was the best day of my life. And, it's just kind of sad because you're like, she just poisoned you. But he seems so happy and really tells her that. And she's, a very young, attractive woman, kisses him on his forehead. And then you see her, like I say, leave the balcony door open. As she leaves, she throws the steak dinner in the trash chute and then leaves. So then obviously, you find out he's the victim. And the first scene in the house, or in his apartment, I should say. Obviously, you see Elsbeth and Kayla, but you see this young detective, which we find out his name is Rivers. And I'm telling you, man, from the first second I saw him, I'm like, this is a cocky SOB. I hope somebody puts him in his place because he's just immature and, just says what he's thinking in a bad way, right? I think it's wonderful if you speak your mind. I don't have a problem with that. But there's a certain time and a place for everything. And he wasn't professional. So, very unprofessional, very rude. Very rude to Elsbeth and Kayla. Elsbeth was mentioning the pajamas. Like, hey, in his pajama drawer, they're all snaps. And Detective Rizzers even says, well, if you're going to look through his stuff, why don't you go shopping at Bloomingdale's or something? Like he says things that are so not appropriate and he's very not professional and he's just a real cocky SOB. I just hated him from the first second I saw him. And so, Elsbeth was noticing that he was dressed in button-down pajamas. So they're like, okay, and he's tucked in real tight, perfect in his bed. Somebody must have dressed him. Somebody must have tucked him into his bed, right? We find out he is married. Her name's Deborah. And she has her own boyfriend in her own apartment. So they've been married for a long time. He's medically incompetent. So, she's in charge of his financials. She gives him his medicine every day. So she's like, I can take you through that, and walked her in the kitchen, showed him the medicine. There was one medicine bottle with the lid upside down or something that Elsbeth noticed. And Detective Rivers tries to arrest her right on the spot. Oh, well, you have a boyfriend. Well, you give him his medicine. Well, I'm arresting you. And Elsbeth was like, you can't do that. You don't have evidence to arrest her. And then she looks at, Deborah, the wife, call your lawyer. And like, obviously, Detective Rivers is like, get out. Like, he's so obnoxious. I don't have enough terrible adjective words to describe him. I just don't like him at all. And Elsbeth knows he wasn't alone because, like I said, she saw the button up pajamas. He was still tucked in, nicely snug in his bed. So they go to the restaurant once they find out, that's where he was the night he died. They find out he was with a young woman. They track it down, find out her name's Chloe. She's a consultant. And it turns out she charges $5,000 an hour. So when Elspeth meets with her, she seems very genuine and cares for for him, for Nathan. I'm sorry, for Nathan. I wanted to look at my notes to get his name right. So obviously I'm a little conflicted because obviously the way Elsbeth works is you see Chloe kill him, right? We saw her put the medicine in his drink. We saw the distraction or diversion she was doing with the takeout steaks, right? Throwing them in the trash and then again and leaving the door open in the balcony. And so I'm like, okay, she obviously planned this. She had, a latex glove when she put the pill bottle there. And I'm like, but yet when we meet her and talk to her, she seems very sincere and very much cares for Nathan. So I'm thinking, is she putting on an act? Because obviously we know she's the killer. But she just seemed, I don't know, too nice. And I know she's an actress, so I was a little conflicted with this one because I'm like, I don't really get it. This isn't the typical rage, jolted lover. What do they always say? Murder always comes down to money or greed or, love or, scorned person. And so I was like, I don't see any of that with her. She makes $5,000 an hour. She's a very wealthy woman. She has tons of clients, which we found out. You know what I mean? And she really cared for Nathan. She was feeding him at the restaurant, but I don't know. She didn't do it like she had to. It was something that you would do for your family. I mean, it's kind of like how I felt when I was taking care of my grandfather when he was getting older. Like it was a caring, loving way. It wasn't like a gold digger, oh, she's only with Nathan for his money and she wants to get into the will. Like I didn't read any of that from her. But I was like, I don't get it. I mean, I know she did it. We watched her. So what's going on with this story? So I kind of liked this episode because it had me guessing as like, was this just a really great actress? Was I just thrown off by the signs? But it turns out in the end, they kind of wanted you to feel that way because well, before I get there, let me just say we see Rivers a few other times, that cocky SOB. Oh, he, like I said, he tried to arrest the wife on the spot with no evidence and then finds out her boyfriend's a doctor. So he arrests him right on the spot. And we're like, what? So he's a doctor. So he has the medicine that killed Nathan, but you can't really place either one of them there. She gives them medicine every afternoon, but she wasn't there and she didn't dress them that night. She was with her boyfriend in bed, which you kind of see. You see her wake up in the morning and look for Nathan and find out he's dead. She's the one who discovered the body, but we know she didn't do it, right? So I'm like, okay, this guy is so, hot-headed. He's just doesn't think anything through and just arrests people and just says stuff. So I'm like, okay, obviously the boyfriend didn't do it. And then he admits to sleeping with Chloe and he's like, look, I slept with Chloe. She has access to my medical stash. She could have gotten the medication. And so, they interview Chloe. And of course, hothead Detective Rivers is like, she obviously did it. And Chloe says, look, I never slept with them. I went to see him for pain in my thigh or whatever. And she's like, maybe he fantasized about us, but I never slept with him. I never took his medication. And they don't have any way to prove it. And then Detective Rivers obviously, crosses a line and says some very inappropriate things to her. Basically calling her a prostitute and that we need to arrest her right away. And all of this stuff, like they had to do a DNA test and swab her mouth, and he had some inappropriate comments. And I was just like, it doesn't matter what she does for a living. You got to treat everybody with respect. I don't care who you are. So I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is ridiculous, right? So I'm like, the captain has to intervene because he's getting way out of hand. So, they interview the wife again after they've arrested the boyfriend, and Rivers is just going hard on the wife. He's just like battering her and just firing off questions, calling her a liar, and she's kind of, he's basically being like bad cop, worst cop, all in one person. And I think that was a little much for the wife. Like, you're coming on really strong, guy. So Captain was like, let Elsbeth go in, get out. Elsbeth came in, offered her, a drink, and just talked with her. And the wife basically told Elsbeth that the reason why she, had him medically incompetent was because of his spending. They obviously have a ton of money. She's not after his money either. She's got plenty of money on her own. And, she didn't really need the money. And you find out he was going on these spending sprees, and you kind of suspect Chloe has some, and Elsbeth goes to Chloe later and sees the painting and all the expensive gifts that he was giving her, but it didn't seem like she was the gold getter type. Like I said earlier, I don't sense that from her. I don't get gold digger prostitute. Like, I just don't get that vibe from her at all. Yeah, her clients give her gifts, but she doesn't seem like the one who's like asking for them. Cause you've seen it. Young women go after rich old men and ask them to buy them things and take his credit card and going on a shopping spree on a Rodeo Drive. Like, I just didn't get that vibe from Chloe. I mean, she had her own money, $5,000 an hour. She had several clients. She was doing great. So I just didn't get that vibe, but apparently Nathan bought her expensive things, and Deborah was like, it was getting out of hand. I had to take it over. And you find out this huge skyscraper they live in, which was where the restaurant was. It was inside the skyscraper. All of the tenants are suing him. So even though he might be this billionaire, he's in this terrible lawsuit with all the tenants saying the skyscraper was so high it was blowing in the wind. The trash chute was really loud, and so people didn't want to live there, and they were basically suing for all these things. So it was a big lawsuit. So I mean, even though he was a billionaire, he was not in a good place. So it's not like this was the best time for Deborah to kill her husband, because now she's left with the lawsuit all by herself because they are still married. So I really didn't see any motive for Deborah. Like I said, we know Chloe did it, but I'm like thinking, Deborah's kind of, even though she had her boyfriend and they weren't intimate and they had an arrangement, I don't think it was a good time for him to die, right? So, but again, this Detective Rivers, he's just like unhinged. I just can't. I'm like, I love Elsbeth, but I was ready for the episode to be over just that I didn't have to see this character. So whatever actor, whatever name is actor that played Detective Rivers, well done, because your job was to get us to dislike and hate you, and you did a great job because I thought you were obnoxious SOB and I didn't like you at all. So great acting. And you actually see at times Elsbeth and Rivers bickering in front of the captain, which was so frustrating because Elsbeth had all these great points, right? And then he takes credit for everything, and Rivers is like, yeah, I thought this. And Elsbeth is like, no, you didn't. That was my idea. I said that. And so obviously the captain, doesn't want bickering in front of him, but it was just like, you smug SOB. Now you're taking credit for what Elsbeth says. Like, I'm just so over you. Completely done with you, right? So, and again, he gets reprimanded for what he said to Chloe and how he was on the whole case. But the what they found out was, I was telling you, they found out from the wife he had all these expensive gifts. There was one expensive gift. It was like a first edition book. And if you know anything about books, first edition books are very expensive and they're very rare. So apparently there was this expensive book that was delivered the day he died. And the wife is trying to return these expensive items, right? And get their money back. Well, the dealer said they won't take the book back because it was damaged. So Elsbeth and Kayla are like, how was it damaged? It was delivered the day he died. So it looks like there was some water damage. And what Elsbeth found out after she read the poem or whatever, water damage was on that one page, Chloe read it to Nathan the night he died, and those are her tears. So what you find out is he never wanted to get old. He was very into his looks. He was very into his image. So when his life, his mental health, his physical health was degrading, he didn't want to live anymore. So basically, Chloe helped him die peacefully. So he planned this. He planned to die peacefully with Chloe and blame it on his wife and boyfriend. So that's why, they used a pill from Deborah's boyfriend, the doctor, and made it to where Deborah would find him. So, I mean, I don't agree with that part, framing your wife and boyfriend, but Chloe cared deeply for him, and that's why at dinner he ate all that food and she was so caring with him. She took him home, put him in his favorite pajamas, read him that book, and tucked him in. And as he was going to sleep and passing away, she was reading this book, this poem, and Chloe was actually crying. So the water damage on the book was her tears. So she didn't want to do it, but she felt like that was his wish. He wanted to die in peace, and she was fulfilling that wish. And it turns out Nathan was Chloe's first client. So she had known him for a long time, was very loyal to him. And he's always treated her, nicely. Like I said, he would buy her gifts. And, like I said, she didn't ask for them, but she did get some gifts from Nathan, as well as I'm sure many other suitors that she had. But it was such a sweet gesture because, as in all Elsbeth episodes, most of the time, later on through the episode, you kind of walk through the steps that were missed, right? You see the murder happen, but then towards the end of the episode, you see any of the missing pieces of how it was completed. And you see her, lying in bed, reading to him, and you can see her crying. And it's just sad because, you know what I mean? She helped him, and then she stayed with him and held his hand, you know what I mean, and read to him as he passed away. And then she had to leave, right? Plant the medicine, open the door, put the trash down the chute. And apparently it was such a high-tech skyscraper. They had this new camera system with security, and it was motion censored. And when it would hear sounds, it kind of moved to that sound. So that's why she did that. She had to get the stake so she could throw one down the trash chute. So when she took them home, they wouldn't see her at the door. And then when she left, she did it again so it wouldn't see her leave. So that was kind of her alibi that she wasn't really there. But it's just sad because Chloe really cared for him, and it was almost like assisted, suicide. And I like I always say, my channel is a judge-free zone. I don't judge. To each his own. Everybody, is different, and you can never put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You can try to understand, but you don't know what somebody's going through. So I always say, if you can be anything, be kind, because you don't know what somebody else is going through. So I don't really have a stance on this particular topic because I just think it's a really sad topic, and I have never been put in that situation. And I think until you are put in that situation, it's very difficult to judge or criticize anybody who wants to do that to themselves or the person who actually helps with it. Because Chloe was crying while she was reading the book, and then Elsbeth was like, we have to arrest you because, you tried to frame the wife and boyfriend. But Elsbeth said, I know you care deeply for him. I know a lot of defense attorneys, right? Because remember, Elsbeth was one. And, Chloe was like, that's okay. I think I'm good. I'm sure some of her clients were attorneys because they were high profile millionaires or billionaires as well as Nathan. But, definitely sad. Like I say, anytime you see somebody, pass away and they choose to do it and they have somebody help them, I just think it's sad. Everybody's like, well, they shouldn't have done that. But you got to think about Chloe. He didn't want to die alone. He didn't. But then Chloe is left seeing him deceased now, and she has to kind of pick up the pieces and plant the evidence like she promised. And she's look, it was all Nathan's idea. And I believe her. I don't think she was lying. I don't think she was trying to get out of it. I think it was true. Nathan planned this to frame his wife and boyfriend, and her boyfriend. And, Chloe was doing what he wanted. She was honoring him. And I think that's a very emotional place to do that. So again, I don't really have a stance on this issue. I don't judge people. I can't possibly put myself in that situation. I think that's difficult. But definitely sad to see anytime somebody feels like, that's the only way out. Now, another comical, I don't want to say another, but a comical relief a little bit to this story. Like I said, this obnoxious, cocky SOB Rivers. I'm like, please just kick him out of the precinct. I don't want to see him again. You find out that and the captain does reprimand him, but you also find out that he's related to the chief of detectives or some bigwig, in the precinct. And Captain Wagner basically says, I don't care if you're the nephew of the Pope. I am reprimanding you. You know what I mean? You can't do that again. I'm going to be watching you. You don't get any special treatment here. And honestly, that was the best scene in the whole show. I was grinning from ear to ear. I was like, go Captain Wagner, because I'm like, somebody needs to put this young SOB in his place. I mean, I don't care if he feels entitled. I don't care who his parents are. When he was like, I don't care if you're related to the Pope, I laughed, but I was like, hell yeah. You don't get any special treatment. And just because of who your parents are or who you're related to, doesn't mean you get to walk around like you own the place. Like, I don't think so. You still need to, work your way up. And you need to earn it, and so I loved that. I was like, go Captain Wagner. I love this show. I love Captain Wagner, Kayla, Elsbeth, obviously. I love all the characters. I love her son, Teddy. But I just love the charisma. I love the camaraderie. I love the teamwork that they do. And I like that they respect each other, especially like that. Like I said, that was one of the happiest moments of the episode for me. The fact that Captain wasn't like, oh, great, he's related to the chief of detectives. Now I have to go easy on him. And he was like, no. So I loved that. And then Kayla sees Rivers upset. Rivers is actually sitting at Kayla's desk, in her chair. So, but he's kind of upset and distraught and has his hands over his face. So Kayla, being the wonderful, nice person she is, even though he's a terrible person and cocky as ever, she kind of tries to be nice. Like, look, it's okay. Like, it's going to get better, blah, blah, blah. And let me give you some advice. And then, even though he's kind of upset and kind of down, he he says, well, I'm not going to take advice from somebody that, I outrank you. So why would I take advice from you? I'm like, man, I just want to slap you through this screen, right? Kayla's being nice. You're sitting at her desk. She's trying to comfort you. And you just go back with, well, I outrank you. So Kayla, she don't take no crap. So she just goes right back at him, which I love. Get out of my seat. Like, you still got to prove yourself. Like, and I freaking loved it. Okay, that's my second favorite scene in the show for this episode. Captain Wagner and then Kayla, like, yes, you know what I mean? Get yourself put in your place. I don't care who you are. You need to be respectful and you need to earn your place. Nothing should be handed to you. Nobody's entitled to anything. You earn it, you work at it, and that's how you get to make a living. So I absolutely loved that. Those are my two favorite scenes. And then the woman captain actually saw Kayla kind of speak up to him, and she's like, hey, I like what I just saw. I'm in this precinct and you're going to be a detective soon. We'll keep in touch. I like, I like what you've been doing. So, I mean, Kayla was like, I just told him off, and, the woman captain saw it and was cool with it. So, I like that. And remember, the reason how I didn't mention it earlier, but the reason Rivers is there is, remember how we didn't actually see, I'm going to talk about it now. We didn't actually see anything about Judge Crawford. Who, is Elsbeth's, Carrie Patterson's real life husband, which you've seen. I mean, he's an amazing actor. He's been in so much. And so I love that they're related, husband and wife in real life, and they're kind of enemies here, as Judge Crawford is a bad guy. So he wasn't mentioned in this episode. However, I'm hoping next week or, we're going to see him, because that is still kind of a side story. So now that they've closed up her Chicago Van Ness case that has kind of been lingering, like, okay, what is going on with her Chicago case? They closed the book on that. Now we can just focus on the side case of Judge Crawford. So I bring that up because this woman captain, she was the captain on the Mertz case. And remember, I mentioned Captain Wagner kind of talked to the other captain and kind of nonchalantly at the bar mentioned maybe she should reopen the case, the one that Judge Crawford killed the guy and was the judge on. And Elsbeth helped, get the woman off and not arrested and not convicted. So she's like, okay, I'm doing you a solid. I'm reopening this case for you. One of the detectives is real sloppy, and needs to show some more, needs to improve. So I'm reopening the case. I'm giving you this sloppy detective and see if you can shape him up. You do great work here. You've got great detectives. Can you kind of help him out? He's a little hot-headed and sloppy with his detective work. And that's Rivers. So, the captain is doing a favor basically for Elsbeth. Remember, the captain knows Elsbeth is on the hunt for Crawford and knows he's dirty. So that's why the captain went to the other woman captain and said, maybe you should reopen the case. Okay, I will, but you need to take Rivers and kind of show him the ropes and see if you can get him straightened out. So that's why he was in this episode. So as much as I really dislike this character, unfortunately, I think we might be seeing him in future episodes because that's linked to that Mertens case, which is the one, with Dahlia, and who Elsbeth helped to not get convicted for the murder that obviously Judge Crawford did. So I really, really hope we don't see this Rivers guy, because I don't like his character one bit. However, since it's kind of the deal that the two captains kind of made, we might see him again. But we do not see Judge Crawford again, like I mentioned in this episode. I can't wait to see him again. I hope he's in next week's episode. And I hope they kind of keep it going, which I think they will, because we're talking about a judge, right? I mean, they have power. They're judge. They know powerful people. So I think it's going to be difficult to bring him down. So I'm excited because it's going to be a long battle, and I can't wait to see more of them, because he's such an amazing actor, and to see him interact with Elsbeth, knowing that they're husband and wife in real life, is just funny to me. I love to see it. They're both amazing actors and actresses. Next week's preview is Alyssa Milano, who I love. She's a great actress, so I'm excited to see, her play out in the next episode. But I hope you liked my review. If you have any comments or questions, definitely leave them below. I love hearing from everybody. And until next week in the next episode, I will see you then. Bye.